Hi, pen friends. It's Christy from Optimal Wellness, Yoga, and More. I want to welcome back those of you that have subscribed and check in regularly. It's lovely to spend time with you. And to those of you that maybe haven't been here before, all I ask is that if you enjoy what you see and hear, that you hit that subscribe button, hit the like, maybe leave a comment if you can. It really helps since I'm a newbie channel here. It helps my videos get seen. I'm here today to go over my November ink report, so to speak. Slight look through my planner for the month of November as well. And in here are a couple secrets that I have not shared with you yet. So we'll dive into that a little later. Just to run down all the pens while I have them here, this is a Pilot Vanishing Point Decimo, the slightly slimmer version of the Vanishing Point. We have a Pelikan M400 in the white tortoiseshell, a Pilot Falcon with a soft extra fine nib, the Navahlur or Narwhal Classic, Original Plus, a Jinhao 86, which is a knockoff of the Parker 51s with a hooded nib. We have your standard Lamy Safari in charcoal, and I have a medium nib in that one. And then another Jinhao, the X750 with a Fude nib. And hopefully I remember to show those to you as well as we go along, but just in case, if I don't mention it, you can always roll back and double check. So I did things a little differently this month. I'm still kind of like getting my feet wet in this whole logging my inks and really analyzing how the ink and pen pairing works or doesn't work for me. But I have to say I'm definitely learning things about my pens. I started doing this in about August, even though I've been using fountain pens since about 2002, 2003 maybe. So about 20 years, but I'd never really taken this approach of really, being methodical in my usage and how it has served me, which is kind of odd because I definitely like charting and organizing and looking for patterns. So this has really been a big eye-opener for me and something that I really enjoy. It's certainly not a requirement. Like I said, I spent 20 years just putting an ink in a pen and using it and going. So know that this is not a requirement if you want to dip your toe into the world of fountain pens and haven't done so. So up first is the Pilot Decimo. If you're new to fountain pens, this is an actual push to click. I have the fine nib in there, and the Japanese nibs tend to run finer than their Western equivalents. And the ink I put in there is this gorgeous, yummy, Dominant Industry Soleil Couchant d'Etretant, which I'm sure I murdered. I do not speak French, so apologies to those that do. I like the ink. My only issue was that in general, it just kind of read gray. And what's coming up for me is I'm thinking this pen runs really dry, in part because I ran across someone else who used an ink that I had to put white lightning into, who's not using white lightning for that ink in another pen. And I think that's why, in general, I'm not a fan of using it on the heavier weight Tomoe River. I get a lot of noise and kind of feedback on that Tomoe River, and I think it's because of the dryness. So I may consider getting that nib made just a tiny bit wetter when I go to my next pen show, which may be Philly in January we're still deciding. They haven't put out the workshop list yet, so not sure, but hoping to go. The second pen is the anniversary pen I got from my wife. This is the Pelikan M400 in the white tortoise shell. You can see the signature Pelikan bill clip. This model actually still has the ability to see through the barrel, which I love. It is a tad on the small side. One of the other things that I found I really loved about this pen is that the threads in the cap are way up in the cap, like probably about halfway up. So when I post it, the threads do not make contact at all with the back of the pen, which is awesome because this is a small pen. And so this one I generally want to post when I'm writing with, just to give it a touch more length. Now, the ink I put in for this month is the Birmingham Pen Company Arugula, and I diluted it somewhere beyond 50%. I don't know, because I took what was at 50% and had sat in a pen, so there had been some evaporation of fluid out of the ink, and then I added more dilution fluid to it before I put it in this pen. But this one, it's a extra fine, but a Western extra fine. But even that, you can see, yes, this is a dry fine, but I would expect these to be a little closer in line width. So it's writing really wet. Now, I have to say, we ordered it from Cult Pens. I went through a bunch of, no, send us more evidence that the nib is not correct. No, send us more. Now we need video. The pictures aren't enough. And a lot of back and forth, only to be told that unless the nib physically rips the page into pieces, it's working correctly for an extra fine. Despite the fact that I told them I've used fountain pens for 20 years and I've used primarily fine and extra fine, and I know this is not writing correctly. I'm assuming it's because it's an overseas. I've talked to a few other people who've had similar issues buying from Cult Pens and living here in the US, so I think that's probably just their default stance if there's any issues. So in the future, anyone from the US or probably Canada ordering from Cult Pens, you may want to ask them to double check the nib before they send it off to you, because this was very obviously misaligned tines. So I fixed it myself. In the process of fixing it myself, I might have made it a tad bit wetter. I'm not certain. I do know that Pelikan tends to run wetter. Some friends of mine that prefer fines and extra fines put their driest inks in Pelikan mediums and are happy with them. So I will keep that in mind until I get to a pen show and until I've made up my mind that if I know I have a dry ink, that is a good pen choice for that. The third ink I worked with was another Birmingham Pen Company, Antique Sepia, and I had it in my Pilot Falcon, and this is a modern flex nib. It's I can't remember if they're 14K. I think it's a 14K nib. But they have this very distinctive shape to them that allows them to flex more than your standard nib, plus the gold makes it softer as well. I am starting to really like my flex writing. I'm finding that the gold flex is 100 times better than the steel flex, or most of the steel flex nibs I've tried, because the tines snap back together much faster, so you get a much better definition in the line width differences. The only thing I found was when I did longer form flex nib writing, like in my transcription notebook, you can see it here, my hand started to cramp. So I think the grip on the Falcon for flex writing, where you have to really put a lot of pressure behind your stroke is maybe a little too narrow for me. That said, when I did this, my neck was actively flaring up and not feeling terribly great, so that could have been playing a piece into it as well. But I am starting to like my flex pen writing. It does look quite different than my usual, but it's growing on me. It's growing on me. Which I guess I should flip back here and show you my transcription of the other two inks too. So from here and on a little bit on this page is the Pilot Decimo. Often I would have written a bit more, but I just don't like the Decimo in this notebook on this paper, which again, this is the heavier weight Tomoe River, the Sanzen. This is a Taroko Design dot grid notebook. And then this is the Pelikan M400 extra fine. That was fine here, especially like I'm totally okay with that line width here with the 5mm grid. It was too crowded in my common planner, which we'll look at the planner later. I want to try to remember to pull out this transcription notebook as we go though. Then the fourth pen is right here, and that is the Navahlur Original Plus, and you can see that there's shimmer in this ink, kind of a rose gold shimmer. This is the Diamine, Dominant Industry Autumn Forest. The nib size is fine. I would do a little bit of agitation like this, and some like this, and even some back and forth like this. And then I would open up the valve back here, because this is a vacuum filler, to make sure that that ink and shimmer could make its way down into the feed. And no shimmer. Shimmer did not come out of this pen. It didn't stop the pen from writing. I always got ink. But that was kind of a disappointment, in part because it meant that it looked quite similar to these three inks. Like, it didn't stand apart at all. And one of the reasons I chose to put it in that pen was that it was a broader fine than I usually like. So I was planning to use it as kind of headline options. And if I tilt it here, like, there's absolutely no shimmer coming out in the transcription page. So it did write well for me after I took care of that too had a nib misalignment when I got it, and some other issues. So I've been a little bummed out about spending a little extra on fountain pens this year, because I've had more problems the more expensive the pen has been up to this point. So that's been a little sad. Next is a Jinhao, so opposite end of the spectrum. Very inexpensive. I think there's a 3-pack for like $13 or something on Amazon, which is how I got it. You can get them through AliExpress as well if you don't mind waiting a bit longer for them to arrive. It has this hooded nib, which I just love, and this silhouette has memories attached to it for me, but my actual 51s are not operable at the moment. Maybe sending them off to get some work done on them. The ink I had in there is the Birmingham Pen Company Chrysanthemum, or Chrysanthemum. I'm not sure which way they intended it to be. If you know, you know. I liked it quite a bit on the lighter weight Tomoe River paper, and on this in the Weeks, which is the OG, and in the Common Planner, which is the Sanzen. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I did find, though, that the ink that is in the feed dries and darkens a lot if it sits for very long. So you can kind of see that in the transcription, because here it's super dark. And then it really kind of got dried out as I wrote at some point. And then at this point, I primed the feed a little bit. And then I got more, like, this is more the normal color it probably should be. This is darker than it should be. But overall, it really was good. I like the pen. I mean, it helps that, you only spend, $4 on it or so. Like, I don't have as high of expectations for it, right? So that can the price of the pen can kind of impact your assessment, positively or negatively, whether it's cheap or it's expensive, just depending on how you're thinking. So keep that in mind. And I did do a tiny bit of smoothing on that nib, I believe, but not very much at all. I did way more work on the Pelikan and the Navahlur than that Jinhao. So the other ink I was thinking of for headlines was a red that my wife picked out when she placed the order from Cult Pens, and that is Diamine Red Dragon. And I put it in my charcoal Lamy Safari because I knew that this feed in this one was particularly wet. But I swapped out the nib. This normally has a carbon black, I think extra fine in it, but I swapped it for my medium Lamy nib, and it worked great. I loved it. Used it for headlines a little bit, but it kind of was a bit much for the stickers I was using, which these are samples from the November Sterling Ink Company kit. You can still order stickers from them, not in kit form, but they still have stickers from this collection on their website if you're interested. And you can tell that I enjoyed it because I wrote over a page, in part because I wasn't happy with just one of the poems, so I continued on. But I liked it. I get lots of shading with this pen. So I don't know. For a while, I was thinking I was going to get rid of my Lamys because I can't reverse write with them if they're too broad for the space I'm wanting to use them in because of that kind of forced triangular grip. But dang, I really like the shading and stuff I get out of all my Lamys. Like even the fine and extra fine seem to get nice shading. So I may be rethinking that a little bit. I may need to adjust the nib sizes I have at my disposal a little bit. Maybe it's a little late, but maybe I'll consider getting a gold nib or two from them, because as far as gold nibs go, if you can catch them during a Fountain Pen Day sale or a Black Friday sale or Cyber Monday or what have you, they can be quite a bit more affordable than others. And the last pen that I shared with you at the beginning of November was one more Jinhao, the X750. This is metal, so this is a quite hefty, heavy pen. Has a snap cap, and this has the Fude nib on it. If you haven't watched my Currently Inks before, I have generally one Fude nib at least inked up every month because I like to use them to draw backgrounds and work kind of as highlighters. And so the ink I had in there this month was the Tono and Lin's Kaleidoscope Ibuki, which is sadly not readily available. I did have a lovely person send me a link where they found somebody with a couple bottles, but they were in the UK and they don't ship to the US, so that was a no-go for me, sadly. But I think I might have found a dupe, and I'll share that with you guys later. You'll notice that the transcription, though, did not end with that, but also this is so light that I did not transcribe with this ink. in this pen. That's not the point of why I put the ink in this pen, so I did not bother transcribing. So this brings us to the mystery. And I can't believe it. But after getting my Pelikan, and maybe that was part of it because that was such a letdown initially, I succumbed to a few new pens here in November. Fountain Pen Day had me ordering 2 new ones for my collection, and I also have one on loan from my friend Simona at Simone. So first up, I ordered from Conklin, or a Conklin, actually from Atlas Stationers, and this is the Conklin Duragraph. I do have an unboxing that will be going up at some point. And I got the OmniFlex nib. So this is a steel flex nib, and it's definitely much stiffer than the Falcon. And here it is. I put it through a bit of a test in the unboxing with just a dip test with Waterman Serenity Blue. And then you'll see here that I inked it up with Diamine Twilight. This was the end of my sample of that. So working a bit on using things up. I transcribed with it here, and I did a little bit of flex writing just for the title. And I think at the bottom of the next page here with the notes of what I used. You see, I mixed up which ink was in which pen briefly. Otherwise, I just used my normal writing, and you can see there's a bit of bounce to that writing. So I do still get some line variation, but it's much more subtle than when I like intentionally flex it. But I really liked it. I should mention all of these pens, with the exception of the Fude nib, were also used to write at least one A5 page of a letter to pen pals. A couple of them got used for a little bit more because I wrote a few pen pal letters this month. Yay, it's nice to get back on that train again. I rated this one an A+. It's great. I don't think I gave the ratings for these others. The Decimo with the Dominant Industries Soleil Couchant de Etretant got a C- because it was less than like standard. The Birmingham Pen Company Arugula that was diluted got a B. Antique Sepia got a B. The Autumn Forest got a C just because there was no sheen that came out, or not sheen, shimmer. There was no shimmer that showed up when I wrote, and you can see it here in the swatch. I think there really is shimmer in there. The Birmingham Pen Co. got a B+, knocked just a little bit because that pen does let the ink dry out in the feed a little bit. The Lamy Safari with the Red Dragon from Diamine got an A, and the Ibuki also got an A because it performed as I expected for the reason that I inked that combo. So then the next pen in here, those of you with a keen eye saw it. This is a Sailor. It is a Sailor Pro Gear Slim in the Autumn Drizzle colorway, and it has a 21K nib, and so part of the draw for Simone, I think, was to compare the different levels of gold nib from Sailor, but overall she kind of decided this pen wasn't for her. She sent it inked, which is fun because it had an ink in it I don't have, and that is the Diamine Brandy Snap. So I really like it. You can see you can get a little bit of line variation out of the 21K if you want. I liked it a lot, and I'm actually putting the ink in the wish list. I'm seriously considering buying this from Simone. My only complaint right now, and we'll have to see, I do want to try it with some other inks in it too, which won't improve this, but because again, this is a small pen like the M400 and the Jinhao 82s, you generally kind of want it capped for a little more length, because if I don't have it capped, it's barely hitting the webbing, and that is even sneaking my grip up a little closer to the nib than I typically do. And for some reason, I don't know if this is universal across the PGSs, but I discovered when I was doing the transcription here, which was basically a page because there's a tiny little bit here, and then here, the cap kept kind of riding up and coming off. It wouldn't stay posted. I don't recall experiencing that when I was writing the pen pal letter though, so it's just something I'm going to have to pay attention to, because I know during the transcription it was incredibly annoying. So I'll have to see. I do love that line width, and especially that line width for my journal, and given that it's a small pen, if I would decide that that is just, specifically for my planners, that would probably be just fine. And then you can see here, there is one more pen. Just as there's one more pen in here. And again, those of you with a keen eye and familiar with Esterbrook know already that this is the Esterbrook Estie with the journaler nib. You can see the J and the GS for Gina Salerno on the nib there, along with the Esterbrook logo. I special ordered this from our local store Penny Post on Fountain Pen Day weekend. They had a little test drive event. It was new, adding Esterbrook to their lineup of fountain pens. I'm glad to see them grow that section. I wanted to support that. I wanted to support them bringing in all of the specialty nibs that Esterbrook offers and having them to test drive, even if it was just for a weekend. It was lovely to get to do that in a much more relaxed place than the DC Pen Show. So I really enjoyed that, and I wanted to support local business, so I did special order this one at first because the gift with purchase was this Fountain Pen Day pen sleeve. I thought, I'm going to have to get the punch, but look at how well the Botanic Garden actually coordinates with this pen sleeve. So the employee who was helping me place the order pointed that out. So I went ahead and went this route. It was a close call between the two, though. I had a difficult time choosing. I had a difficult time choosing ink to put in there too, which you may experience when and if you watch the unboxing, which again will be going up at some later date here. Again, I did a dip test with the Waterman Serenity Blue. Just, I'm more nervous to just, do a quick flush and throw ink into a new pen after that Pelikan experience. So, I'm taking more time to really examine the nib, to do some dry writing with it, and to do dip tests before I actually put ink in it. Now, some places you have to be careful. You have to watch, because some places won't take it back even if it was just dip tested. So be picky, be observant, take your time. But I ended up inking it with the very end of my sample of Pilot Iroshizuku Syo-ro, and I'm liking it. The transcription was beautiful. This is a broader line that I'm accustomed to, but the fact that you get the line variation helps. And I purchased it knowing that this was going to be too big of a nib for me to use standardly in my common planner. So my intention is to practice writing a bit bigger in long form journaling in 2024. And this will probably be my primary pen for long form journaling, unless I change my mind at some point. And these were the couple inks that I carried over from October. I forgot to transcribe in October, so that's what that is. It isn't any sort of sneak peek at what's to come in December or anything like that. I gave this pairing an A, and I forgot to pull it out, but I also decided over the course of this month that I really enjoyed doing those untangles with the fountain pens for 30 Inks 30 Days in September. But doing it with colored ink and then using a water brush to shade was a bit more challenged than I necessarily want every day. So I'd like to be able to do more traditional Zentangle with graphite shading. And so I got myself a bottle of the Platinum Carbon Black, and I pulled out my loop and checked all of my ecos, and I do have hairline cracks in all 3 of them. I specifically chose to put the Carbon Black in these 2 in particular because this one writes much wetter. They're both fine nibs, but this one writes more like a medium, and this one writes more like the fine that it is. And I did think having some line variation would be nice because when I work with my crayons, I do sometimes mix and match the nib sizes in one given Zentangle. So far I'm liking it. You do get the ink kind of starting to stain the nibs. My understanding is with abrasion, you can get that off. Perhaps even just putting it in my ultrasonic cleaner with pen flush would maybe do that as well. But since these have the start of hairline cracks in the section, I'm just not going to worry about it. I would love, though, to hear, so I would like an extra fine as well. So what pen, like under $35, would you buy to dedicate for Carbon Black? I'm leaning towards Platinum, like their step up from the Preppy, or maybe a Kakuno, I'm not sure. But I'd love to hear if you've dedicated pens to Carbon Black and have experience, like what is your preference, and or any other black document ink, like what do you like to put that in, where you don't have to worry too much. I mean, the reason I like having them in the eco is that I know that, at least for now, inks that go in my eco will usually write good for at least 3 months without needing to be flushed and cleaned and everything. So I would like something that can, hold up to long-term ink holding, but I don't want to dedicate, say, an Esterbrook Estie to that because I don't want to invest that kind of money into what will ultimately be a bit of a knockaround pen. So that is my ink report. I have September in progress here. Yes, I will be doing Inkvent. I'll probably be doing it similar to how I did my 30 Inks 30 Days in September, which would be like a weekly recap. I think that's where I'm going. And now we're going to take a look at my common planner. I'm still struggling a bit with, like, this was the only week where I did a really good job of really using it for the whole week. I tend to kind of fall off like after Wednesday, and I need to kind of figure that out, like why that happens. I don't know. I mean, I am packing my week pretty heavy early on, and I think I'm kind of wearing myself out. So then, like, I'm either low energy or high pain or both in the latter part of the week. So I kind of have to figure some of that stuff out. But yeah, you see. Nothing in the second half of the week. I hardly did anything that week. Amelia was gone, and so I was on my own that whole week, just me and Fitz, and a 3-level townhome for just me is a bit much and was kind of wearing on me. And then I did like absolutely nothing this week because of the holiday. I think I still taught a lot of these classes, but like I had no DBT, I didn't have therapy. It was Thanksgiving Thursday. We had my sister's family had Christmas, and so we did that over Zoom on Friday. Amelia was really busy Friday and Saturday. We actually did our own Thanksgiving dining on Sunday because I forgot that a vegetarian roast still might have to thaw before you bake it. So, so that wasn't ready on Thursday. And you can see here we have a Wednesday and Thursday that where November started. I did note down all the things I did, and I did a lot, but then I didn't do any like standard journaling. But I did make time to get the gratitude down, which was good. Saturday was the test drive event on the 4th. So this was me test driving all the different nibs from Esterbrook. So this was the Techo here, and I decided to try writing with it a little bit bigger. The fine flex, just like I found with the Conklin, it doesn't snap back very well, so it's kind of ho-hum in response. Although the one thing I will say about the Steel Flex nibs is they do tend to break in a little bit, so this could have potential, but ultimately it's a Yovo nib, so which I think the Conklin are as well. They just have their own specialty nib unit, I believe. Correct me in the comments down below if I'm wrong. The Esterbrook Botanical Gardens that they had there was the journaler nib, and this, you can see I put stars by it because this was my favorite. So that's the one that I ordered. They had the needlepoint that is by Kirk Spear. That I really like the line of it, but yes, it is so super fine. Like that is really like you're only gonna go that route if you really need to write that small and that fine of a line, because it isn't necessarily a pleasant write. And so you can see here in this journal entry how kind of dry the Decimo was, because this was the Decimo. And here I used the Flex pen to write gratitude, and this is the Navahlur and no shimmer. Got to try some of the Sailor specialty nibs. I tried the Lamy Studio and also the Lamy 2000. The Lamy 2000 is definitely on my wish list. Here is the Pelikan, which is kind of okay, but kind of not as legible because of the broader line. In general, my personal stuff was the Decimo, and my work stuff was the Pelikan. I might want to think in the future to reverse that and put work stuff in the drier Decimo as well, because that makes it fall to the back a little bit more. And again, Pelikan, the Decimo there. This is the X750, and I use that to create like faux washi to reduce some of the bulk. I've done that with paintbrushes as well, which actually looks a little better. The Jinhao for a lot of it with the Chrysanthemum. I just really enjoyed that color and how it tied in with the stickers from Sterling Ink. Just overall, here I used the Conklin since that arrived, and I chose an ink that would kind of slip in with that color scheme. Okay, it kind of matches fairly well with these dark backgrounds in those. I had to process some therapy that day, so I went ahead. I knew I had way more than enough pages, so I went ahead and just did that here. This is the day the Esterbrook arrived. Did a tiny little sketch there and a little thing about inking it up. Wife got home that day, and then I did, like I said, I did like nothing this week. Nothing. But that's okay. That happens. It was a very low energy day, or low energy week. But overall, I'd say it was a pretty good month. I enjoyed myself. What inks did you use for November? And did you have any like standout surprises and standout misses? I'd love to hear about them. And again, if you enjoyed this, I would really appreciate if you hit the like button and the subscribe button down below. Maybe even hit the bell to get alerted when I post my next video. And I will be back soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day and your week. And until I see you again, be safe and be well. Aho. And so it is. Bye.